Breaking news. In early January 2026, the United States House of Representatives crossed a line that cannot be erased. With a formal vote approving the first article of impeachment against Donald Trump, charging abuse of power, the House triggered a constitutional process that reshapes the historical record regardless of how it ultimately ends. Democrats secured the majority required on that article, marking an irreversible step that places Trump among a very small and infamous group, only the third president in American history to be impeached. A second vote on an additional article is scheduled to follow, and Washington is now frozen in a moment where procedure, power, and political survival collide in full view of the nation. It is critical, right from the start, to separate fact from frenzy. The House has not voted to remove Donald Trump from office. He has not been ordered to resign. No emergency transfer of presidential authority has occurred. There are no tanks in the streets, no sealed doors at the White House, no constitutional alarm bells that automatically eject a sitting president. What has occurred is something more subtle, more dangerous, and in many ways, more consequential. The House has formally approved articles of impeachment, initiating the next phase of constitutional accountability. That single act permanently alters Trump's presidency, no matter how loudly he denies it or how aggressively his allies attempt to rewrite it. Inside the House chamber, something final has happened. A vote was taken. A majority was recorded. The charge of abuse of power is now embedded in the official history of the United States. That cannot be undone by speeches, lawsuits, or social media outrage. Trump can fight the consequences, but he cannot erase the fact. He now carries the mark of impeachment into every future political battle, every court proceeding, every negotiation with allies and adversaries alike. Yet almost immediately, misinformation began to spread faster than clarity. Online, the narrative fractured. Some claimed Trump was being forced out. Others insisted Congress had demanded his resignation and that he had defiantly refused. More extreme voices declared that emergency removal was already underway, that power was secretly shifting behind closed doors, that the system had snapped. None of that is accurate. And misunderstanding this moment is not harmless confusion. It distorts where leverage truly exists and who actually holds power right now. Here is the reality. Impeachment resolutions exist. Constitutional mechanisms exist. Members of Congress are openly calling for removal. Editorial boards are declaring Trump unfit. Activist groups are demanding immediate accountability. All of that is real. But Congress, as an institution, has not voted to remove him. No binding ultimatum has been issued. No constitutional emergency mechanism has been triggered. Institutions act through votes, not vibes, and votes carry consequences only when the numbers exist to enforce them. This distinction matters because Donald Trump has never governed by principle. He governs by personal incentive. Throughout his tenure, he has demonstrated that abstract concepts like institutional stability, constitutional norms, or global credibility matter to him only when they intersect with his own power and protection. Evidence alone does not remove a president. Evidence establishes grounds. Removal requires political will, and political will is a currency Congress may or may not choose to spend. That is why this moment feels both explosive and stalled at the same time. The machinery for accountability exists. The gears are visible. The levers are labeled. But machinery does not operate itself. Someone has to pull the lever, and pulling it carries risk. Before we go further, pause and ask yourself this question. Do you believe Congress is acting out of constitutional duty or political fear? And if fear is driving decisions, fear of whom? To understand where this is headed, we have to slow the moment down and walk through what is actually happening, step by step, without the distortion of headline hysteria. Multiple impeachment resolutions have been formally filed against President Trump in the current Congress. These are not leaks or speculative drafts. They are official documents entered into the public record. House Resolution 353 is the most comprehensive. It contains 7 separate articles of impeachment: obstruction of justice, usurpation of Congress's power of the purse, abuse of trade authority and acts of international aggression, violations of First Amendment rights, creation of unlawful offices, bribery and corruption, and finally, tyranny. That word matters. Tyranny is not commentary. It is not rhetorical flourish. It is the literal language used in a formal impeachment resolution introduced by sitting members of the House of Representatives. The resolution argues that the president violated his oath to faithfully execute the laws and to protect and defend the Constitution, abusing powers unique to the presidency and doing so corruptly. That document exists. It is detailed. It is legally structured, and it is sitting inside the Judiciary Committee right now. It is not alone. House Resolution 415 and House Resolution 939 make similar accusations, reinforcing a pattern. These filings are not symbolic gestures. They build an official record. They preserve evidence. They create documentation that future Congresses, courts, prosecutors, and historians will be forced to confront. They are laying groundwork, even if enforcement lags behind. At the same time, individual members of Congress are publicly calling for Trump to resign. Editorial boards are escalating language. Protest movements are growing louder. When people say Congress is calling for resignation, there is a partial truth there. Some members are. But Congress as a body has not acted collectively, and that distinction defines everything that follows. Here is where precision becomes non-negotiable. Filing an impeachment resolution is not the same as voting on impeachment. Voting on impeachment is not the same as removal. Calling for resignation is not the same as enforcing consequences. Constitutional tools do not activate themselves. They require votes, coordination, and courage, and those qualities are in short supply when political survival is at stake. There are only 2 constitutional paths to removal. The first is impeachment and conviction. The House votes by simple majority to impeach. If that happens, the Senate conducts a trial. Conviction and removal require a 2/3 vote, 67 senators. Trump has already survived this process twice. In 2019, he was impeached for pressuring Ukraine. The Senate acquitted him. In 2021, he was impeached for inciting the January 6th attack. The Senate acquitted him again. In both cases, Republican senators chose partisan protection over institutional enforcement. The second path is the 25th Amendment. Under Section 4, the Vice President and a majority of the Cabinet can declare the President unable to discharge the duties of office. Power transfers immediately. The President can contest that decision, forcing Congress to vote. 2/3 of both chambers are required to keep the President removed. This mechanism has never been used to permanently remove a president. It was designed for incapacity, not misconduct, and it requires loyalty to the Constitution to override loyalty to the President. In Trump's case, that loyalty barrier is formidable. Right now, neither path is operational. Republicans retain control of key procedural choke points and will not advance impeachment to removal. Senate conviction lacks the votes. The 25th Amendment is politically implausible. Trump remains in office not because evidence is weak, but because incentives still favor delay and protection. This is the core truth. The system is under strain, not collapse. Mechanisms exist. Evidence exists, political will lags behind, and that lag is where danger lives. So what would actually have to change for removal to become real? History provides an uncomfortable answer. Presidents do not fall when accusations are filed. They fall when defending them becomes more dangerous than abandoning them. That inflection point has not yet arrived, but it is not imaginary. There are 4 conditions that historically shift that calculation. The first is collapse in public support within the president's own coalition. Right now, many Republican lawmakers fear Trump's base more than they fear general election voters. That fear freezes action. But if sustained erosion appears among Republican voters, donors, and suburban conservatives, the math flips. Protection becomes liability. That is exactly what ended Richard Nixon's presidency. Not evidence alone, but the moment Republican voters stopped defending him. The second condition is a precipitating event that breaks through partisan defenses. Not a slow drip, but something undeniable. A clear criminal act, a national security disaster, a brazen abuse of power that cannot be reframed. These moments are rare, but when they occur, timelines compress violently. The third condition is coordination. One lawmaker breaking ranks is punished, a handful is marginalized, but when a critical mass moves together, risk is distributed. That is why leadership signals matter. Once it becomes safe to defect, defections cascade. The fourth condition is electoral change. If Democrats retake procedural control in the next election cycle, impeachment becomes unavoidable. Even without Senate conviction, the pressure reshapes the system. Donors react, courts react, institutions recalibrate. This is why claims that Trump is being forced out right now feel emotionally satisfying but strategically misleading. They skip the hard middle. They confuse documentation with enforcement. And confusion breeds disengagement, which protects entrenched power. Here is the question that matters right now. Do you still believe sustained pressure can move this system, or do you believe institutional loyalty has already fractured beyond repair? That question sits at the center of everything unfolding, because the answer determines whether accountability remains possible or whether power has fully insulated itself from consequence. What is happening at this stage is not dramatic, but it is far more consequential than it appears. The process is slow by design. The record is being built deliberately. Language that once lived only in commentary is now formalized. Terms like abuse of power, corruption, and tyranny are no longer rhetorical weapons used by critics. They are embedded in official filings, committee records, and institutional documentation. That shift matters. It lowers the threshold for future action. It establishes that this conduct was challenged, documented, and preserved, not normalized or ignored. Future actors will not be able to claim ambiguity. The historical record is being written in real time. Accountability, however, does not flow from Congress alone. That is a critical misunderstanding. Courts continue to operate independently of legislative paralysis. Civil judgments move forward. Criminal investigations proceed. Injunctions are issued. Enforcement actions accumulate. A president can remain in office and still be constrained, boxed in, and narrowed by legal pressure. Removal is not the only form of accountability. Power does not vanish all at once. It is chipped away, and that chipping, over time, alters behavior, limits reach, and reshapes the political environment. Accountability is cumulative, not singular, and it rarely arrives in a single dramatic moment. The most dangerous misconception is the belief that if removal does not happen immediately, it will never happen at all. History does not support that conclusion. Democracies almost never collapse in sudden explosions. They erode gradually through fatigue, disengagement, and the quiet surrender that follows repeated disappointment. The real danger emerges when people stop applying pressure because they are convinced the system is immune. That belief, more than any individual decision, accelerates decay. Right now, Trump remains in office because the incentives for protection still outweigh the costs of enforcement. That is the calculation governing behavior across institutions. But that calculation is not fixed. It can change. It has changed before. It changes when clarity replaces noise, when confusion is stripped away, and when sustained pressure makes inaction more expensive than action. Political systems respond to incentives, not outrage. Pressure works only when it is consistent, informed, and relentless. This moment is not an ending. It is a shaping phase. Outcomes are still being formed. Lines are being drawn. Precedents are being tested. That is precisely why understanding matters more than emotional release. Outrage burns hot and fast. Understanding endures, and endurance is what ultimately determines whether accountability survives or fades into performance. So the question remains open, and it belongs to everyone watching. Do you believe pressure still works, or do you believe the system has already chosen loyalty over law? Because how people answer that question will shape what comes next, far more than any single vote ever could. So now, I want to hear from you. Do you believe this impeachment effort ultimately weakens Trump or strengthens him? Do you think Congress will ever cross the line from documentation to enforcement? And if not, what does that say about the future of presidential power in the United States? Drop your view, because this story is not over, and the next move will tell us far more than today's vote ever could.